Hey guys, so in this video, we're going to start our final exam review by going into chapter 1, which is going to lay the foundation for understanding biology by exploring what makes something alive. So it seems like a really simple question, right? The question of what is life? But scientifically, it's actually pretty complex. And in biology, we define life based on a set of 7 characteristics. So these 7 properties of life, they have to all be present in order for something to be considered living. So let's break them down. First, we're going to talk about growth and development. So living organisms, they grow and develop, and that means that they not only increase in size, but they also change in form and function over time. And this process, it's driven by genetic information. It's driven by DNA. So for example, we can think of a baby that is learning how to walk or a caterpillar that's transforming into a butterfly. Growth involves making more cells, and development is about those cells that are specializing to perform different roles. It's not just about getting bigger, it's about becoming more complex and capable. So the next property of life is energy metabolism. So everything living needs energy to survive. Metabolism, it refers to all of the chemical reactions in an organism that maintain life. It includes catabolism, the breaking down of things for energy, and anabolism, building complex molecules from simpler ones. Humans, we digest food to make ATP, and plants use sunlight in photosynthesis. Energy flows through living systems, and without it, life simply can't happen. So homeostasis, it is the ability to maintain a stable internal environment, even when external conditions change. Our bodies, they regulate things like temperature, blood sugar, and water balance through feedback loops. For instance, when your body gets too hot, we sweat to cool down, and that's homeostasis at work. It's a behind-the-scenes system that keeps things running smoothly. Adaptations, they are traits that are going to help organisms survive and reproduce in their environment, and these traits are going to be inherited. These changes, they happen over many generations through a process that is called natural selection, such as a cactus storing water in the desert or a polar bear's thick fur. Right? Those are some examples. But the key to adaptation is that it happens to populations over time. It isn't something that an individual chooses to do. So response to stimuli, this means that living things, they can respond to changes in their environment. So this can be something as simple as pulling your hand away from a hot surface or a sunflower turning towards the sun. These responses, they can be controlled by our nervous system, by our hormones, or even individual cells. And this characteristic, it helps organisms survive moment to moment. So when we're talking about organization or order, what we know is that life is very highly ordered, from the atomic level all the way up to ecosystems. Living things, they show a very clear structure, and cells, they are that basic unit of life. But there is a hierarchy. Our atoms make up molecules, which make up organelles, which make up cells, and so on. And the complexity is unique to life. Randomness does not equal life. And finally, reproduction. All living things must reproduce in order to keep their species going. Some do it asexually, like bacteria, and others just divide in two. Others do it sexually by combining genetic materials from 2 parents. But either way, the continuity of life, it relies on reproduction. And life only comes from life. So now that we've covered those 7 properties, I want to connect them to the 5 unifying themes of biology. These themes, they help us organize and make sense of life's complexity. So the first one is organization. We know that life is structured in levels, from tiny molecules all the way to large ecosystems. And this theme, it relates to both the organization and order property and the growth and development one. And that is because our living things, they are built in layers of increasing complexity. Up next, we have information. And if you guys remember, DNA is life's blueprint. It controls development and passes instruction from parent to offspring. And this theme, it's going to growth and development and reproduction, because Both are going to rely on genetic information being transmitted and expressed. Then we have energy and matter, and this is about how living things use energy and cycle materials. Energy metabolism, it fits here perfectly, and so does growth and development, and that's because building cells and tissues, it requires energy and raw materials. Then we have interaction. Life is interactive. Our organisms, they respond to the environment and regulate their internal state, which includes response to stimulus, homeostasis, and even energy metabolism, all of which involve adjusting to changing conditions. And finally, we have evolution. So we know that life, it changes over time through natural selection. Adaptation and reproduction are the key properties here. They are the traits that are going to help survival, that they're going to be passed on and become more common in populations. So now I want to talk about the specific biological organization. That is a really core theme of biology. So our living systems, they are arranged in levels, and every single level builds on the one below it. So we have molecules to start off with. And when we're talking about molecules, we're talking about a chemical structure that is made up of two or more atoms. We can think of DNA or glucose. After molecule, we get to organelle. Organelles, they are these tiny structures inside of our cell. They are the functional components of the cell, and it includes things like mitochondria or the nucleus. Then we get the cell. The cell is the smallest unit of life. Some organisms, they can be unicellular, meanwhile others have literally trillions of cells. And then we get to tissues. Tissues, it's just a group of cells that are working together like muscle or nervous tissue. Then we have organs. Organs are structures that are made up of multiple tissues, kind of like our heart and our lungs. And then we get to organisms. Organisms are single individual living things. After organisms, we get population, which is a group of the same species in a really specific area. Then we get to community. And community, it's all of the populations in an area. If it's plants, animal, fungi, and bacteria, it doesn't matter. And then we get to ecosystem. The difference between ecosystem and community is that community is talking only about living things. Meanwhile, our ecosystem, it's a community plus all of the non-living factors like sunlight, water, and even wind. And then we get to biosphere. Biosphere, it is the sum of all life and environments on Earth. So somewhere in between molecule and organelle, life begins. Somewhere in this space right here, we go from non-living to living, and chemical reactions is what's going to make that happen. So even though we have atoms that are smaller than molecules, we start talking about our biological hierarchy at the molecular level because that is where life's complexity begins, and that is what biology is a study of. It is the study of life. So now I want to talk about the different types of cells that we have, and we have two main types. We have prokaryotes and we have eukaryotes. Prokaryotic cells, they are simple, they're small, and they lack a nucleus. DNA is going to just float around in the cell, and this includes bacteria and archaea, the bacteria and archaic domains of life. Meanwhile, our eukaryotic cells, they are larger and they are more complex. They have a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. It includes inside of that domain different kingdoms. It includes plantae, fungi, animalia, and protists. So talking about the three domains of life, we have bacteria. They are prokaryotic, they are unicellular, and they are found everywhere. Then we have archaea. Archaea is also prokaryotic, but they are genetically different, and they often live in extreme environments. And then we have eukarya. Eukarya is its own domain, and it includes all eukaryotic life. from single-celled protists to complex animals and plants. And within eukarya, we have 4 kingdoms. We have kingdom Plantae, in which we have multicellular and photosynthetic organisms. We have kingdom Fungi, in which it's decomposers and mostly multicellular. Then we have kingdom Animalia, which is multicellular, heterotrophic, and capable of movement. And finally, we have protists. Protists, they are extremely diverse and they are mostly unicellular. So one of the most important ideas in biology and a big focus of chapter 1 is natural selection. Natural selection, it is a theory that was developed by Charles Darwin, and here is how it works. We have individuals in a population that have a variety of traits. We have traits that can be heritable, and what that means is that they can be passed from parents to offspring. And one of the ideas of natural selection is competition. The idea that organisms are going to produce more offspring than the environment can support. And individuals that have advantageous traits, they're going to survive and reproduce more. So over time, those traits, they become more common and that population is going to evolve. Natural selection, it explains why species change and adapt to their environments. So now I want to talk about feedback mechanisms. So feedback mechanisms, they're going to help organisms maintain homeostasis. So we have 2 main types, and one of them is a negative feedback system. So negative feedback system, it works to reverse a change. So it is a process in which the output of a system reduces the original stimulus. So for example, if our blood sugar, if it gets too high, we're going to have insulin be secreted to bring down our blood sugar. And most of the body's processes, they rely on this kind of feedback just to stay stable. But on the other hand, we have positive feedback. And in positive feedback, what we're going to have is an increased effect, the amplification of a change. So we can think of childbirth, right? So in childbirth, our contractions, they're going to lead to more contractions until that baby is born. It's like a snowball effect that's going to push that body towards a specific outcome. So we really can't move forward in an introductory biology class without touching on the scientific method. So understanding how living systems respond to various stimuli is really important. And it's also important to recognize how we study and test these processes. And that's going to bring us to the idea of controlled scientific experiments. And in controlled scientific experiments, we can apply the same logic of regulation to test hypotheses and uncover the underlying mechanisms of life. When we have a controlled scientific experiment, it is a method that is used by scientists to test a hypothesis. And it's going to do that by comparing 2 or more groups. So in a controlled scientific experiment, we have a control group, and what happens in a control group is that it does not receive the experimental treatment. It serves as a baseline for comparison. And we have another group that is called the experimental group. And the experimental group is the one that does receive that variable or that treatment that is being tested. And all of the other conditions, they're going to be kept the same as in the control. So if we're given a research question and we have to choose the evidence to support it, we can do that by looking for evidence that is going to show a measurable difference between our control and experimental groups that can be linked to the variable that is being tested. So if we have a question and this question says, does fertilizer increase plant growth? The first thing that we need to do is create a control group. So in our control group, we are only going to grow a plant without fertilizer. And then we are going to measure how much it grows. For our experimental group, what we're going to do is grow that same exact plant in the same exact conditions, except we add fertilizer. And then we are going to measure its growth. So if the experimental group, the one that has fertilizer, if it shows significantly taller plants, or let's say more leaf growth in comparison to the control group, then that data is going to support our hypothesis. So that is all for chapter 1. It's going to set the stage for everything else that we explored this semester. We need to remember that life is organized, it's complex, it's energy driven, it's responsive, it's evolving, and everything starts with cells. We need to keep these foundational concepts in mind as we move forward, because we're going to see them come up over and over again throughout the course. So if this video was helpful, remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. See you in the next video where we go over chapter 2, which is all about the chemical context of life.